The call from the stars. The Galactic Concord had classified Earth as a Class 12 death world for good reason. Its gravity crushed most sentient species. Its atmosphere contained corrosive oxygen. Its biosphere teemed with predators, pathogens, and poisons. Its tectonic activity produced catastrophic natural disasters. Its weather systems generated everything from searing heat to freezing cold. Its oceans harbored crushing pressures and lurking dangers. And somehow, against all cosmic logic, it had produced humans. The humans didn't just survive their death world. They thrived on it. They actively sought out its most extreme environments for recreation. They deliberately exposed themselves to physical stress until their bodies transformed. They handled toxic substances to craft medicines and explosives. They consumed poisons for pleasure. They created simulations of danger for entertainment. The Galactic Concord reluctantly granted humans membership but kept them at arm's length. Sure, humans were useful for colonizing marginal worlds too harsh for the standard template beings. Their bizarre biology could process toxins that would kill other species. Their fearlessness made them excellent emergency responders, but they were unpredictable, aggressive, and frankly terrifying to the rest of the civilized galaxy. At least, that was the consensus until the signal arrived. The quantum transmission burst across all communication channels simultaneously, a desperate plea encoded in the universal mathematical language. Dr. Aisha Okafor, Earth's representative to the Galactic Concord, was in the middle of yet another frustrating negotiation when every screen in the massive chamber flickered and displayed the same message. "That's impossible," whispered Thrixna, the Seratian ambassador. His translucent appendages trembled. "The coordinates, that's the vorpal expanse." The chamber erupted in panic. Species that had evolved on gentle worlds with predictable dangers didn't handle existential threats well. Aisha had studied the vorpal expanse during her xenostrophysics training, a region of space where the laws of physics became increasingly unstable. Theoretical models suggested it was expanding. Slowly, very slowly, over billions of years. Apparently, the models had been wrong. "The signal indicates rapid acceleration of the expanse boundary," announced High Counselor Phylum, their feathered crest flattened in distress. "Multiple inhabited systems are already experiencing space-time distortions. Billions of lives are at risk. We must evacuate them," suggested the Tellurian representative. "Impossible," countered Phylum. "The distortions are affecting faster than light travel. Conventional ships cannot approach safely." "Then we build unconventional ships," Aisha said. The chamber fell silent as every alien gaze turned toward her. "Human vessels are already more heavily shielded than standard Concord designs," she continued. "Our ships are built to withstand meteorite impacts, radiation surges, and electromagnetic pulses because we evolved on a world that taught us to expect catastrophe." Phylum's crest rose slightly. "Are you suggesting humans could reach the affected systems?" "I'm suggesting we try," Aisha replied. "While the rest of you debate, we'll assemble a rescue team." Human Space Command wasted no time. They called in their best, not their most politically palatable representatives, but their most effective problem solvers, the ones who thrived under impossible conditions. Commander Riza Khalili had survived 14 days trapped in the Marianas mining colony after a catastrophic collapse, keeping 17 people alive with dwindling oxygen and no communication. His neural implants were designed to function under extreme pressure, allowing his brain to process information faster than any unaugmented human. Dr. Maya Chen was the foremost expert on quantum field stabilization, having developed shields that allowed humans to mine asteroid belts that would tear apart conventional craft. She personally tested her experimental shields by standing on the surface of an asteroid during a solar storm, protected only by a field of her own design. Security Chief James "Tank" Washington had served in the Martian Defense Force during the methane riots, his body modified with carbon fiber skeletal reinforcements and enhanced musculature that would let him function in up to 3G environments. His skin contained embedded reactive polymers that hardened on impact, essentially turning his body into a living armor. The fourth member of the team, Dr. Kiona Mary, specialized in xenobiology and emergency medicine. Her genetic modifications allowed her to synthesize antivenoms and antibiotics directly from her bone marrow, making her a walking pharmacy for any human ailment. She developed this ability after being stranded on one of Earth's remaining uncharted islands during a research expedition gone wrong. When the team assembled aboard the experimental vessel Theseus, even they were impressed by the ship's modifications. The hull contained layered metamaterials designed to adapt to space-time distortions. The engines could recalibrate their quantum signatures to match shifting physical constants. The life support systems could sustain the crew, even if external conditions rendered conventional physics unreliable. "She's beautiful," Maya whispered, running her hand along a bulkhead. "Designed to bend without breaking." "Like humans," Reza replied with a grim smile. The Theseus reached the Concorde assembly point in record time. A flotilla of alien vessels maintained position at what their sensors deemed the safe boundary. Representatives from a dozen species crowded the communication channels, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of concern and disbelief as the human ship approached. The alien ambassador who greeted them aboard the Concorde flagship couldn't hide its shock at seeing the humans up close. Varine was a Lithosian, a crystalline being evolved under gentle gravity and stable conditions. It regarded the humans with faceted eyes that reflected their images back in kaleidoscopic fragments. "Your biological systems are remarkable," Varine chimed, the translator struggling to convey the mixture of horror and fascination in its harmonics. "You maintain homeostasis despite radical environmental fluctuations. Your skeletal structures bear loads that would shatter my people. Your neural functions continue despite oxygen saturation that would incinerate most sentient minds." "We're just built differently," Tank said with a shrug that made the Lithosian flinch. Varine led them to the command center where representatives from the affected systems had gathered. The view screen showed worlds in various states of distress, oceans rising impossibly into the air, forests growing in accelerated time then crumbling to dust, mountains liquefying and solidifying in bizarre configurations. 3 billion sentients are trapped, explained Varine. The distortions affect different systems differently, but in all cases, they're intensifying. We've lost contact with 2 planets already. The signal originated from the Malosian system, added another alien, this one a hovering gas bag entity that introduced itself as Observer Huff. They were the first affected, but somehow managed to send a warning before their communications failed completely. Reza studied the sensor data, his neural implants processing the patterns faster than standard human cognition. The distortions have some predictability to them. They're not random. They're wave-like. If they're waves, Maya added, they might be counteracted with appropriately tuned opposing waves. "A theory only," chimed Varine skeptically. "No species has successfully navigated the vorpal expanse. The mathematics alone." "We didn't come here to debate mathematics," Kiona interrupted. "We came to save people." Within hours, the Theseus was underway, loaded with equipment and supplies. As they penetrated deeper into the distortion zone, the laws of physics began to change subtly. Light behaved strangely, bending around objects or coalescing into impossible patterns. Gravity fluctuated, sometimes disappearing entirely, sometimes crushing them into their seats. The aliens had provided a liaison, a multi-limbed, exoskeleton-wearing being named Zix from a species called the Carthuri. It spent the first hour of the journey staring at the humans in horrified fascination. "Your bodies expel water through your skin as a cooling mechanism," Zix observed as Reza wiped sweat from his brow during a gravity surge. "Deliberately allowing precious internal fluid to escape seems inefficient. It keeps us from overheating," Reza explained, focusing on the ship's controls as reality distorted around them. "And your respiratory system draws corrosive oxygen directly into exchange tissues without protective filtration," Zix continued, mandibles clicking nervously. How do you not combust? Years of practice, Tank replied dryly. As they approached the Melosian system, the distortions intensified. Space itself seemed to fold and unfold around them. Through the viewports, stars stretched into lines, then curved into spirals, then shattered into fragments of light before reassembling. Conventional engines failing, Maya reported, her fingers dancing across the control surfaces, switching to quantum anchors. The ship shuddered, then stabilized as the experimental drive engaged. It didn't fight the distortions, it synchronized with them, allowing the Theseus to ride the waves of unreality like a surfer on Earth's treacherous oceans. Zix's exoskeleton clicked in agitation. Impossible. Your vessel should be tearing apart. Funny thing about humans, Kion said, checking her medical supplies as the ship continued its impossible journey. We tend to redefine impossible on a regular basis. The Melosian homeworld came into view, a once beautiful blue-green sphere now marbled with strange, pulsating patterns of energy. Cities floated impossibly in the sky, oceans froze and thawed in rhythmic patterns, and the very continents seemed to breathe. Life signs? Riza asked. Scattered but present, Kion confirmed. They're still alive down there, but they won't be for long. The biological stress alone. Then let's get them out, Reza said, setting course for the fractured world. It's time to show the galaxy what Deathworlders do best. Impossible problems, human solutions. The Theseus entered Melosian orbit through a sea of contradictions. Instruments showed they were simultaneously in vacuum and atmosphere. Temperature readings fluctuated between absolute zero and plasma hot in microseconds. Light behaved as particle, wave, and something else entirely. A new state of matter born from physics gone mad. This is impossible. Zix chittered, its exoskeleton rattling with stress. No organic being can survive these conditions. Watch us, Tank replied, securing his gear. The Melosians had once been a standard galactic template species, bipedal, oxygen-breathing, carbon-based, with technological advancements centered around harmony with their environment. Their world had been considered a jewel of the sector, famous for its stable climate and predictable seasons. Now, that stability had become their doom. Evolution on their gentle world had never prepared them for catastrophic change. Their bodies and technology were failing simultaneously, as reality itself betrayed their expectations. I'm detecting a concentration of life signs in what appears to be a shielded government complex, Kion reported. They've created some kind of stable bubble, but it's collapsing. Communications? Riza asked. Nothing coherent, Maya replied. Just quantum static and mathematical fragments. Whatever they're trying to say, the distortions are corrupting it. Then we go down and get them, Reza decided. We can't evacuate an entire planet, but we can save their leadership and scientific community, the ones who might understand what's happening. The landing shuttle detached from the Theseus, Maya's stabilization field surrounding it in a cocoon of regulated physics. As they descended, the world outside the viewports defied description. Forests grew upside down. Ocean water formed perfect cubes that floated in midair. Buildings collapsed and rebuilt themselves in endless cycles. Their atmosphere is shifting composition every few seconds, Kion warned. One moment breathable, the next filled with compounds that shouldn't exist in nature. Suits required, and expect them to fail. They landed in what had once been a public square, now a rippling landscape where marble flowed like water. The team exited the shuttle in sealed environmental suits, each reinforced with Maya's stabilization technology and additional layers of protection designed for the harshest environments humans had ever encountered. Even with the protection, the alien world assaulted their senses. Gravity shifted underfoot, making each step a new calculation. Sound arrived before it was created. Light wrapped around objects instead of illuminating them. Movement is going to be a problem, Tank observed, anchoring himself as a gravity wave nearly tore him from the ground. Standard locomotion won't work here. Nothing standard about this mission, Reza replied. He activated his neural implants, allowing his brain to process the chaos faster, finding patterns in the apparently random shifts. There's a rhythm to the distortions. We can use it. Move when the patterns align, hold position when they don't. The humans advanced across the impossible landscape in a strange dance of stop-motion movement, pushing forward when reality briefly stabilized, securing themselves when it didn't. Zix, despite its advanced exoskeleton, struggled to keep pace. How are you anticipating the shifts? The alien gasped as Tank physically anchored it during a particularly violent distortion. We're not, Kion explained, her modified biology already adapting to the stress. We're reacting. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We don't need to be fastest. We just need to keep going when everything else stops. The government complex loomed ahead, a once elegant spire of crystal and living metal, now twisting like a corkscrew into impossible dimensions. Its base remained somewhat stable, protected by what appeared to be massive field generators struggling against the tide of unreality. The entrance is phasing in and out of existence, Maya observed. We'll need to time this perfectly. As they approached, a group of Melosians emerged from the building's fluctuating doorway. Tall, slender beings with iridescent skin, they moved with the careful precision of creatures evolved in perfect harmony with their environment. Now that environment was betraying them, and their movements had become uncertain, pained. The lead Melosian stumbled forward, its translucent body showing internal organs shifting in ways that couldn't be natural or comfortable. It spoke, but the words emerged broken, sometimes preceding the movement of its mouth, sometimes following minutes later. They're experiencing time differently than we are, Kion realized. The distortions are affecting their perception. Maya activated a specialized translator, designed to function even when the normal rules of physics were compromised. It converted the fragmented speech into something the humans could understand. You came. The Melosian's words finally resolved coherently. The Deathworlders. The impossible ones. We're here to evacuate your people, Reza confirmed. The Melosian's expression shifted through several emotions too quickly to track. Too many. Billions. Cannot save all. We know, Kion said gently, but we can save your scientists, your leaders, the ones who might find a solution. No solution, the Melosian replied, gesturing toward the sky, where reality itself seemed to be unraveling. The boundaries, thinning. What lies beyond? Coming through. A violent distortion wave hit, and several Melosians simply vanish, their bodies unable to maintain cohesion in the shifting reality. The remaining aliens keened in distress, a sound that somehow arrived before it was made. What's causing this? Maya demanded, her scientific mind still seeking understanding even as chaos consumed the world around them. The leap Melosian guided them inside the relative stability of the complex, where hundreds more of its kind huddled in terror. On a massive display, incomprehensible equations scrolled, interspersed with images of the distortions spreading across their solar system. The expanse, alive, the Melosian explained haltingly. Not random. Purposeful. Hungry. Reza's neural implants processed the equations faster than any unaugmented human could. They're saying the vorpal expanse isn't a natural phenomenon. It's directed. Intelligent. A predator, Tank translated grimly. Yes, the Melosian confirmed. Feeds on, ordered reality. Creates chaos. Consumes possibility. Another distortion wave hit, stronger than before. The building's structure groaned as dimensions twisted against each other. Several support columns shattered, then reformed in physically impossible configurations. We need to evacuate now, Reza ordered. The stable zone is collapsing. But as they began organizing the Melosians for evacuation, Maya's attention remained fixed on the equations, her genetically enhanced brain, designed to comprehend quantum field theories beyond standard human understanding, saw something the others missed. Wait, she said, stepping closer to the display. The distortions aren't random destruction. They're a digestive process. breaking down ordered reality into components that can be consumed. How does that help us? Tank demanded as he braced himself against another gravity shift. Because all digestive processes have a pattern, Maya replied, her fingers flying across her davad. And if it's a pattern, it can be disrupted. The Malosian scientist who had been monitoring the equations trilled in surprise. Yes, disruption. Possible. Tried broadcasting counter-frequencies, but insufficient power. The Theseus, Maya said, turning to Riza. It's quantum anchors. They're already generating counter-frequencies to keep us stable. If we reconfigure them, amplify the output, we could give this thing indigestion. Riza finished, understanding immediately. Not a permanent solution, the Malosian warned. But time. To evacuate more. The team split up. While Tank and Keon organized the evacuation of the Malosian scientists, Riza and Maya raced back to the shuttle, fighting through intensifying distortions that threatened to tear them apart at a molecular level. Twice, Maya's stabilization fields failed completely, and they found themselves briefly existing in multiple states simultaneously, an experience that would have driven most sentient beings mad. But humans, with their bizarre neurology and endless adaptability, processed the impossible experience as just another survival challenge. Back aboard the Theseus, Maya worked feverishly to reconfigure the quantum anchors, pushing the experimental technology far beyond its design parameters. Riza coordinated with the evacuation teams, using the ship's limited transport capacity to bring up as many Malosians as possible. The distortions are accelerating, Six reported, its exoskeleton now showing stress fractures from the continuous reality shifts. At this rate, the entire system will be consumed within hours. Then we work faster, Maya replied without looking up from her calculations. Humans are good at beating deadlines. When the modified quantum anchors activated, the effect was immediate and dramatic. The Theseus generated a counter-frequency that rippled outward, temporarily stabilizing a bubble of ordered reality around the ship and extending down to the planet's surface. Through the viewports, they could see the distortions recoiling, as if the very fabric of the vorpal expanse had encountered something it couldn't easily digest. The evacuation accelerated as shuttles moved through the stabilized corridor between the Theseus and the government complex. But the respite wouldn't last. Already, the entity, if that's what it was, began adapting, probing the counter-frequency for weaknesses. It's learning, Maya warned. Our advantage is temporary. As the last shuttle docked with its precious cargo of Malosian scientists and cultural leaders, Riza gave the order to withdraw. The Theseus turned away from the doomed world, its engines straining against physics that no longer obeyed consistent rules. Behind them, the planet began to collapse in on itself, folding into dimensions that human minds couldn't comprehend. The Malosians watched in silence, their home disappearing into the maw of the vorpal expanse. We couldn't save them all, Keon said softly, treating the survivors for the biological damage caused by reality distortions. But we saved these, Reza replied. And they carry the knowledge to perhaps stop this from happening again. The journey back through the distortion zone was a nightmare of fluctuating reality, but the humans persisted. The Theseus, designed by humans who expected catastrophe, held together despite stresses that would have torn apart any conventional vessel. When they finally emerged into stable space, the waiting Concorde fleet could scarcely believe what they were seeing. Not only had the humans returned, they had brought survivors, data, and a temporary defensive measure against the Expanse's advance. In the Concorde assembly chamber, the galactic representatives listened in stunned silence as Riza explained what they had discovered and what they had accomplished. The vorpal expanse isn't a natural phenomenon, he concluded. It's an entity, or perhaps a collective of entities, that feeds on ordered reality. Maya's counter-frequency buys us time, but not a permanent solution. How can we fight something that consumes reality itself? Asked High Counselor Phi Lum, their feathered crest flat with despair. The same way humans have always survived on our death world. Maya replied. We adapt. We study our predators until we understand them better than they understand themselves. We turn their strengths into weaknesses. And we never, ever give up, added Keon. The Melusian leader stepped forward, its body still showing signs of the trauma it had endured. We doubted when Earth joined the Concord. We feared the Deathworlders and their strange biology, their aggressive adaptability, their incomprehensible tolerance for stress and danger. It turned to face the assembled representatives of 100 gentle worlds. We were wrong to fear them. The very traits that made them terrifying are the traits that saved us. Perhaps the galaxy needs its Deathworlders after all. As the Concord delegates began planning a coordinated response to the Vorpal expanse, Reza stood at a viewport, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an impossible predator consumed reality itself. A threat that should, by any reasonable assessment, spell doom for all ordered existence. He smiled grimly. Humanity had faced impossible odds before. Earth itself had tried to kill them countless times, and yet they had not merely survived. They had thrived. They had turned their deadly homeworld into an advantage, their bodies and minds forged in adversity. Now the galaxy needed what only Deathworlders could provide: the audacity to face the impossible and the stubborn determination to overcome it. The universe had sent a desperate call for help, and humanity had answered. The Deathworlders had arrived, bringing with them the greatest weapon of all, the unbreakable will of a species that refused to accept extinction, no matter the odds. The real fight was just beginning.